Welcome back, everyone. I hope you participated in some great discussions today. We're very excited to have you join us to continue the conversation here. For those of you who may have missed this morning's plenary, my name is Jennifer Lebron, and I am the leader of the USAID Higher Education Learning Network, the HELN, or the Helen, as we like to call it, and I will be emceeing this closing session. I want to remind you that we encourage you to actively use the chat box to comment and share throughout the program. Captioning is available, and you can access the captions by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And should we unexpectedly experience any technical challenges with any of our speakers today, we ask that you be patient as we try to troubleshoot any difficulties. At the closing of each day's summit, we are going to take a moment to reflect and synthesize our learning by featuring different voices from the field. And to start us off, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Eric Bergthold, who is the Executive Director of the Office of International Development at the University of Arizona, and who also serves on the Higher Education Learning Network Steering Group. Mr. Bergthold has more than 20 years of experience as an international development professional in over 15 countries in Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe, including managing and implementing international projects for donors such as USAID, DANITA, the World Bank, Chevron, and others. He was a Peace Corps volunteer in Eritrea from 1995 to 97, and an English language teacher in Japan. And he has a master's degree in applied anthropology with a focus on community health and development. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you all for the opportunity and challenge to try to synthesize so many interesting, impactful, and groundbreaking programs that we heard throughout the day. As a member of the Helen Steering Group, I'm excited to see so much evidence and good practices around the world. And I encourage you to join the Helen network so that you can learn from these colleagues and learn new ways to engage through Helen. Just a reminder that as we began the day focused on innovation, and we specifically focus on question 6 of the Higher Education Learning Agenda. How can higher education systems and institutions play a more active role in the development and strengthening of national and regional innovation ecosystems? And we'll post a link to that learning agenda here in the chat. And also to note that just last week, USAID published an evidence primer addressing that question. And you can find it by clicking on the link in the chat box and going to the HUBA platform and clicking on resources and then documents. So I'd like to spend a few moments sharing some of the evidence that I heard, and there was a lot of it. So I'll just take a few moments to highlight some of the things that stood out to me. One was from the session that was hosted by MSU and the Be Heard project. And they spoke about a return on investment study that they did around their program. So they calculated all the costs and benefits. And they came up with a number about the return on investment, which is currently about 23%. And then they looked at how long it would take to sort of break even from the investment to the benefits. And so they anticipated, based on their current trajectory, it'd be about 10 years. But that's kind of exciting new ways to measure whether these programs are returning an economic benefit is really interesting. So I urge everyone to look at that. I also tuned into the Laser Pulse session on embedded research translation. And I found out what was really interesting about that was, there's been a lot of work on evidence to practice and translating that evidence into utilization by policymakers. And they have this new model, but they also looked at how was this model similar and different to other models that are out there through a literature research. And one of the things that struck me is innovation, is it innovative because it's new and different, or is it innovative because it's taken what we've learned in the past and designed something new and to build on that? So I thought that was an interesting aspect of that. Really good session on also from MSU and Alliance for African Partnerships. And what I really loved about that session was hearing the voices from the African partners and hearing about what they found some of their lessons learned were from engaging in a partnership with the US university. So I think that was a really interesting session, and I hope everyone had a chance to listen to that. There was also a really innovative, interesting approach to measuring capacity to innovate, which was, I think was an IREX project, if I'm correct. But looking at measuring cognition and application and measuring competencies, really good model for doing that, presented in that session. And then, so those are a few, there's so many more, but I would like to also just sort of identify gaps that I noticed through the sessions and through my work. One of them is, this idea of partnership. What are the models for partnership? How do we improve the way that we partner with organizations, especially when we're talking about partnerships between Global North, Global South, and particularly learning from the perspectives and experiences of our partners in the Global South if we're coming from the Global North. Also, what works in research translation, I think is really important to get to the demand side. I think so many times, so often universities are presenting information, generating information, generating data. It's sort of supply driven. But what about the policymakers? Do we really understand what their needs are, what kind of information they need? How is that utilized so that we can design our research to better impact the information that they need? So those are a couple of things that I thought were really interesting to sort of focus on. And then just a couple of takeaways from the sessions here. I think one of the things that is known, but it's good to remind people is innovation is just not about technology, but it's about processes, partnerships, utilization of research. There are so many ways to innovate on the work that we're doing in so many spaces, and I think a lot of the universities are doing that. So that's what I would like to leave you all with today. And with that, I'd like to introduce our other summary person here is going to youth. So our youth speaker today is Mr. James Odede, and he will be reflecting on today's session from his perspective. He is a Kenyan technologist and social entrepreneur and the founder of Lakehub, which is an innovation hub based in Kenya. And he has brought together the technology community of Western Kenya, raised funding from local and international partners, and built Kenya's first technology innovation hub outside Nairobi. He is also co-founder and CTO of AquaRech, an agricultural technology or ag tech company, leveraging mobile technology to improve fish farmers' productivity, enable market access, and create an inclusive aquaculture value chain. A graduate of Maseno University with a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science and Technology, James was honored as one of 40 young icons of change in Africa selected to participate in an event organized by Facebook to celebrate Africa's next generation of leaders and innovators. James, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Eric, for the wonderful introduction. Hi, everybody. As introduced, my name is James Odede, and I'd like us to begin. I begin my reflections today with my innovation story. So my innovation story started at the university, and I think that's why today's session is relevant to me. While I was studying computer science at the university in Kenya, Maseno University, as mentioned, the opportunity to study computer science enlightened me to a lot of opportunities in technology. However, it was my interaction with the industry that sparked my interest in how to use technology as a tool for innovation and social change. While at the university, I took part in programs run by some of the leading tech companies, like Google Student Ambassador run by Google, Intel Student Developer Program, which is also working with computer science students to build real world products. And it enabled me to interact with industry players and experience firsthand how they identified and created solutions using tech. So that led me to founding Lakehub with a vision of building Africa's 21st century youth workforce. And to do this, we had to find approaches that eliminated barriers for youth to access education. And one of them, the two most important barriers that we identified was cost and access. And also seeing how we could prioritize skills with a pathway to employment. Because we see there's a role in higher education that plays in addressing the youth unemployment issue in Africa. So through Lakehub Academy, which is a coding bootcamp, we trained and linked to jobs over 600 youth in software development. And one of the reasons why we've been successful in this is because we had a very close partnership with industry players, where organizations approach us to what type of skills they need, and we tailor our curriculum to those, and then they join our community of employers that of tech the students after finishing the bootcamp. So I'd like to reflect on some of the key things that I've seen today in the today's sessions, and I'd like us to begin with what was like the overriding conversation in Plenary A, where there was a lot of focus on understanding who our customers are. And so it was said that we need to understand and love our customers. And that make me to beg the questions from a higher education point of view, who is our customer? And I tend to think the students are not our customers, in my opinion. So we need to view the real world work, that is the private sector, public sector, or research environment, the environment where the students will apply what they've learned as our customers. And if we apply what we learned today on the aspect of understanding and loving our customers, then the higher education will design programs or training programs that will meet the needs of the customers, which is the consumers of the talent, the skills, and the knowledge which the students acquire through us. And the team that talked about project-based learning approaches for university students in Uganda highlighted some of the benefits of engaging the stakeholders, like the industry players in providing the solutions. And finally, there was a session on engineering application and research skills as a pathway to local innovation, which placed the teacher's role in teaching students to solve problems, and based on that, revise the curriculum. And some of the good outcomes that were highlighted were community solutions and cognitive outcomes. And finally, I just want us to leave us with a statement that innovation requires real-world inspiration and challenge. And I think higher education programs in partnership with private sector actors can create the real-world inspirations for students for them to succeed. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, James. I love that, where inspiration comes from in your own story of hearing that. And thank you to Eric as well for sharing both shout outs to programs that we've heard today, as well as the learning agenda, which I'm always happy to highlight. So thank you so much, both of you, for being here and for doing a really impossible job, which is trying to synthesize so much information and provide your own perspective on it. You all set the bar quite high for us for the rest of the summit. So thank you so much for being here. I'd like to transition now so that we can hear more about USAID's work in higher education specifically, and to begin our 3-week launch of the USAID Higher Education Learning Network, as I said, the Helen. I am rejoined on the stage today by LeAnna Marr, who kicked off our event earlier today. LeAnna, as you may recall, is USAID's Acting Deputy Assistant Administrator and Acting Senior Coordinator of U.S. International Basic Education Assistance in the Bureau for Development, Democracy, and Innovation, DDI. And LeAnna Marr, I'm thrilled to welcome you back to the summit stage. Thanks so much for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And again, it's just been such an exciting day. So I want to thank everyone for joining us from around the world for this inaugural USAID Higher Education Evidence Summit. We really are excited that you've all joined us. And I just think, it's about time that we did this. We know that strong higher education systems are critical to achieving development objectives because of the role higher education plays in society, providing quality and relevant education and training, advancing knowledge and research, and engaging and strengthening networks and communities. I want to talk a little bit about the Higher Education Learning Network, or HELEN as we affectionately call it now, but building on the lessons learned through USAID's engagement with the Education and Crisis and Conflict Network, ECCN, and the Global Reading Network, GRN. We know that networks can be transformative, create communities, elevate local voices, which is so important, and is really, localization is just central to our administrators' vision for development and for the agency, and also generate new avenues for collaboration, meaning, and progress. Adding the Higher Education Learning Network, or HELEN, to our global learning system acknowledges the importance of investing in strengthening higher education systems and in engaging the higher education community to address global challenges. HELEN also allows USAID to localize its work by elevating voices in the field to contribute to their learning and knowledge and lead local solutions to local problems with the global platform's support. Since HELEN's first community building session in September, we've had opportunities to hear from the higher education community to help grow the network we are launching today. A snapshot of events that HELEN has hosted include a webinar on the USAID Higher Education Scholarship Toolkit to help missions and implementing partners meet critical human resource needs through scholarship programming, a distance learning webinar co-hosted with the Global Reading Network to share tools and resources in response to education disruption caused by COVID-19. This has just been so critical in the response to COVID-19 across the globe. And also our first Higher Education Fail Fest for online learning, where we learned from stories about taking risks, failing, and learning from failure to improve education when transitioning to online learning during COVID. The Higher Education Learning Network is continuing to offer tools, resources, and events in the upcoming year, including a higher education and industry collaboration event in June. This is also an important opportunity to recognize our initial Higher Education Learning Network steering group members who have agreed to help lead the network in its inaugural year and provide a representative voice for members from around the world in shaping strategic priorities. So really a huge thank you to all of you for this important role. It's so important to us at USAID that we have really a lot of different representation and leadership for this network. I encourage all of you to stay involved throughout the summit. On our last day, we will have an important announcement about how you can become a part of the network and advance learning of what works in higher education. The engagement that we've experienced so far demonstrates how creating this community and offering opportunities to engage with USAID in new ways is so important for higher education. I'm pleased to hand over to the Higher Education Learning Network leader, Dr. Jennifer Lebron, to share more about how you can engage with HELEN in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, LeAnna. I really appreciate it. And thank you for shouting out our summit steering group that we saw on the screen. Those folks worked with me for a long period of months to put this event together, and I so appreciate their contributions to the summit. So I'm very excited to be leading this network because the HELEN network is really built by and for its membership. As I said earlier, it's really dedicated to captioning or to connecting higher education stakeholders to the ideas, evidence, practices, and people that can help them improve their work and make an impact in their communities. And we do that by creating lots of opportunities for our members to learn from each other through the generation, capture, and dissemination of evidence in support of the USAID Higher Education Learning Agenda, which Eric mentioned earlier. As a global network, HELEN provides wide-ranging support for member-proposed convenings, learning events, consultations, as well as support for the development and tools and knowledge products to serve our diverse membership. And do it in culturally and contextually relevant ways. So I encourage you to think about proposing, leading, or participating in Helen's activities, because members you share your expertise, you can build relationships, and you can learn from each other to enhance higher education's really unique role in development across sectors. And I'll just take a moment to say that Helen is part of the USAID Leading Through Learning Global Platform, which includes those other networks that LeAnna mentioned earlier, it's a learning system, really, global networks and regional hubs that are designed to improve educational practices around the world. Over the next several weeks, as we come together to share our knowledge and learning from each other during the summit, I hope that you will take this opportunity to network, to ask questions, to continue conversations, and even as each day's program comes to a conclusion, staying on and making these connections. And I hope that if you consider joining the Helen, you'll have the opportunity to keep these connections thriving. So if you've not already done that, I encourage you to find out more about the Helen using a link that will be in the chat in a moment. And you can sign up to receive communication from us as well to find out what's next from the Helen Network. And the last thing I want to say about the Helen, that as LeAnna mentioned, on the very last day of the summit, we will be having a very special announcement about the ways in which you can shape activities and events for the network over the next year. And so we will officially launch our call for concept notes, and I'll be sharing more details about that in our last day. So I hope that you will join us. You can join us on our last day and also by joining the network. Okay, so if you are anything like me, your head is probably swimming with great ideas, with new approaches, with new understandings. I am feeling very energized by the conversations I've had today. And so I'm really curious how you want to take this work with you moving forward. I am going to ask you to consider what more you'd like to learn about our topic for today, innovation in higher education, which is our theme for this week. So I'm going to introduce you to something you're going to see throughout the summit, which is called our Further Learning Whiteboard, with a link in the chat. So throughout the summit, we're asking participants to share how you want to continue learning on the topics that were covered over these 3 weeks. Sharing your learning interests will allow us to program for new events, help us uncover new evidence, share new learning over the next year through the Helen. So please use the link in the chat to share a few words of what more would you like to learn pertaining to today's theme. And if you're in the Google platform, you can copy and paste the link from the chat as well and put it into your web browser to respond. I can't wait to see these further learning interests. We're going to revisit those throughout the summit. So please take a moment to think about something that you want to do and want to hear about more over the next year. Okay, so thank you for doing that. And we're not done. The summit and our discussion of innovation is far from over. We are going to continue to program our program tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time for a session that I'm actually really excited about. It's featuring a group of student innovators from William Mary Global Innovation Challenge program. And they're going to talk to a little bit about a global innovation challenge that we heard about today earlier from Alexis Bonnell. So I encourage you to join us again tomorrow to find out more about that and how that might be able to be integrated into your work. And with that, I think I will say thank you to everyone who's been a part of our opening today. I know that we are going to close the stream, but again, I encourage you to stay on the Google platform, message someone. You can feel free to message me, make a connection, find a network, join a conversation, and continue this learning today and tomorrow. Thank you all so much for being here. Have a great day.